Hey everyone, and welcome back to the garden. This is the May update, and it's been a month of change, patience, and a few tough calls. May always feels like a transition. The days are longer, the light hits different, and the plants start growing faster. But it's still not quite summer. There were some warm days, sure, but also a few cold snaps that really shook things up, especially in the outdoor garden. So I ended up holding back a bit. Most of the plants are still on the shelf or balcony, just waiting for their moment to shine outdoors in June. That said, a lot still happened. The tomatoes started to ripen, and I harvested the first real batches, which honestly felt like a huge win this early in the season. The radishes exploded, and I ended up pulling out way more than I expected. The cucumbers are looking great too, strong and healthy, and I started to slowly acclimate them on the balcony. But it wasn't all good news. The sunflowers took some frost damage, and worst of all the peppers got sick. They started strong, flowering, growing tall, but by the end of the month it was clear that something was really wrong. Still, that's just a part of the process. Some things thrive, others fail, and you just learn, plant more seeds, and keep going. So, let's look back at everything that went down this May. The windowsill tomato patch really came to life this May. At the very start of the month, I've noticed that pretty much all of the plants had started setting fruit. It began in mid to late April, with just a few small green tomatoes appearing, but by the first week of May, nearly every single plant had little green fruit growing, tucked under the leaves like tiny hidden gems. It's honestly wild how quickly things escalated. Just a few weeks ago, I was excited about the first flowers, and now I've got a jungle of tomato plants with dozens of fruits in various stages of growth. Some plants are more productive than others, obviously, but the overall health and density of fruit across the board is kind of impressive, especially considering that all of this is happening on a couple of windowsills in a small apartment. Most of the tomatoes are still green at this stage, but you can already tell which ones are going to ripen soon. I've also been carefully rotating the plants and adjusting their supports as they grow taller and heavier. The windowsill setup is getting a little chaotic, but it's working, and that's what matters. Another fun observation. The plants started smelling super strong this month. That classic tomato leaf scent you get when you brush past them. Honestly, makes the whole room smell like summer. May was a really exciting month for the windowsill tomato patch. At the beginning of the month, almost all of the plants had tiny green tomatoes forming. Some just barely the size of a pea, others already starting to plump up. Watching them ripen day by day was oddly emotional. Like, these were just little sprouts a few months ago, and now they are feeding me? By the third week of May, we finally got to the best part, the first real harvest. I've been keeping track on the dates and weights, and it's honestly kind of satisfying seeing the numbers go up. On May 22nd, we picked our very first batch, 115 grams, small but symbolic. Then, on the 26th, things picked up. We got 205 grams, which felt like a real haul. May 28th was our biggest harvest of the month, 309 grams of juicy little tomatoes. And to close the month, May 30th, we picked another 156 grams. Altogether, That's 785 grams of homegrown tomatoes just in May, and they are still going. Not bad for a bunch of plants cramped on a windowsill. The balcony has been pretty chill this month. Not too much happening, but the plants are doing well and slowly building up. The salad and bok choy are growing strong, filling out nicely in their containers. They are not quite ready to harvest yet, but they are getting there. You can already tell they are going to be crunchy and satisfying once the time comes. The strawberries are also doing their thing. The ones in the hanging pots have been pushing out more leaves and finally some fruit started forming this month. Still green and nowhere near ripe, but it's exciting to see them starting to develop. I'm low-key checking them every morning like it's Christmas, just to see if one magically turned red overnight. So far, no luck. I also decided to try something new this month and planted some marigold seeds. The idea is to eventually move them outdoors to help attract pollinators and maybe deter a few pests since marigolds are known for that. But before we get into how they are growing, can we just talk about how weird marigold seeds look? Seriously, they are these long, thin, black and white little spikes that don't even look like seeds. First time I saw them, I thought I had bought some kind of dried petals or leaves. Anyways, despite their cursed appearance, they sprouted pretty well. By the end of May, most of the seeds were up and growing slowly. I'm keeping them in their pots on the balcony for now to let them get stronger, and then I'll move them out to the garden in June once they got a few real leaves and can survive the great outdoors. Out in the garden, the sunflowers were off to a strong start at the beginning of May. They were growing fast, looking healthy, and I was already imagining them towering over the garden like natural trellises for my cucumbers. But of course, nature had other plans. In the first week of May, we got hit with another unexpected cold snap, and, unfortunately, some of the bigger sunflowers got frost damage. I learned something interesting here. The smaller seedlings actually handled the cold better, while the larger, more established ones were the first to struggle. Kind of ironic, right? But I didn't give up on them. Most of the damaged plants managed to bounce back slowly over the next few weeks. Some were too far gone though, either taken out by the frost or finished off by slugs who moved in like opportunists right after the weather cleared. Slugs really don't waste time. By the end of the month, I was left with 6 strong survivors. And honestly, they are looking good. They've recovered their vigor, and I think they'll still grow tall enough to do their job as a natural cucumber trellises. In early June, I'm planning to sow more sunflower seeds to replace the lost ones, and hopefully the timing should still work out. It's just one of those classic garden moments. Unexpected weather, a few losses, but also some small victories. Alright, now let's talk about the radishes. Because, wow, they really stole the show in the outdoor garden this May. Throughout the month, they were just thriving. Big, leafy tops, vibrant green color, and you could even see some of the red and white shoulders pushing up through the soil. Honestly, I was out there almost every day just admiring how well they were growing. There is something so satisfying about radishes. They grow fast, they are reliable, and they are one of the few crops where you get instant gratification in just a few weeks. By mid-May, I knew it was time to start harvesting. On May 21st, I did my first proper pull, and ended up with 593 grams of radishes. That was already a solid harvest, and I didn't even take all the mature ones, just the ones that were clearly ready. Then, a few days later, on May 27th, I went in for the second big harvest, and this one was wild. I pulled up 1586 grams. That's over 1.5 kilos of radishes in one go. It completely filled a tray, and I had to do a little sorting and washing just to make space in the kitchen. The funny thing is, I wasn't even sure how well they would do when I first sowed the seeds. This was my first time doing such a dense sowing, and I was worried they would crowd each other out. But clearly, they didn't mind. Now, the raised beds are looking a lot more empty, but that was always the plan. The radishes were the quick first crop to make use of the cooler spring weather, and now they are mostly out. The space is opening up for my summer crops like zucchinis, cucumbers, melons, and more. So yeah, May was radish month, and it was honestly one of the most rewarding parts of the whole garden this season. Out in the garden, the strawberries are thriving. These are the older plants that I've had growing here for 2 or 3 seasons now, and they are really showing their strength. They've been flowering heavily, and by now, many of them have started forming green fruit. Since they've overwintered in the soil and had time to develop strong root systems, they're already well ahead of the younger balcony strawberries. It's always satisfying to see these perennials come back stronger each year. They've stored energy in their crowns and it really shows. With the weather warming up, I'm definitely looking forward to a solid strawberry harvest in June. Now, right next to the strawberries, there is this mystery berry bush. So, last year I planted a few different kinds of berry bushes, but most of them didn't make it. Ants got in the roots and wiped them out. But this one survivor stuck around, and at the time I wasn't totally sure what it was. I originally thought it might be a raspberry, but now that it's fully leafed out and loaded with developing fruit, it's definitely not. Looking at it now, I'm fairly certain it's either a currant or a European gooseberry, both part of the ribes family. The leaves, the branching, and especially the way the fruit is forming are all pretty telling signs. Either way, I'm excited to finally get some fruit from it this year and maybe solve the mystery once for all. It's like nature's slowest game of guess the plant. Let's check in on the summer crops I started on the shelf earlier this spring. Now, I'll be honest, this part of the update is kind of bittersweet. So, remember all those dwarf zucchinis, melons, and the giant pumpkin I planted back in April? I was really looking forward to growing them, especially in those compact garden boxes. But unfortunately, most of them didn't make it. And yeah, it was probably my fault. At first, the seedlings looked okay. They sprouted, stretched a bit, and put out their first true leaves. But then, they just sort of stalled. They stayed small, pale, and clearly weren't happy. Looking back, I realized the spot where I had the shelf set up was just too shaded. They weren't getting nearly enough sunlight. And for heat-loving summer crops like these, especially melons and zucchinis, light is everything. Without it, they just don't have the energy to grow strong. So they weakened over time and slowly died off. It's a tough one, but a good learning moment for the next season. But not everything was a flop. The parthenocarpic salad cucumbers I planted at the same time have been doing incredibly well. All 12 seeds sprouted, and the seedlings are looking robust and healthy, even in the same shaded area. So either they're just more tolerant or I just got lucky. Their leaves are strong and deep green, and they are definitely ready for the next step. By the end of May, with the nights finally warming up, I started to harden off two of the cucumbers on the balcony. They are adjusting well to the sunlight and wind, so I'll be planting them into the garden in early June along with the rest. And to make up for the failed summer crops, I also decided to plant another round of melon, zucchini, and pumpkin seeds at the end of May. This time I placed them in a much sunnier spot where they'll hopefully grow stronger and more vigorously. If all goes well, they'll join the cucumbers in the garden sometime in mid to late June. So, while this month had some setbacks, it's still part of the process, and there's a lot to look forward to in the coming weeks. Alright, so let's talk about the peppers. This was probably the most dramatic storyline of May. At the start of the month, everything looked really promising. The pepper plants were honestly doing surprisingly well. Most of them were already pretty tall and strong, with dark green leaves, and some even started flowering. I was pretty hyped. I really thought this was going to be the season of peppers. So I decided it was time to get them into their final homes. I carefully repotted the smaller ones into a second 1 meter planter, pairing them with the other ones that were already growing in the first big pot. That gave me two long containers, each with 5 peppers, a total of 10 right there. And then I had 4 more really strong ones that I gave their own individual pots. Altogether, that made 14 pepper plants growing on the shelf, lined up alongside the 5 tomatoes, forming what I imagine as this perfect little urban pepper jungle destined for my balcony soon. It looked great. It felt satisfying. I was already imagining the harvest, hot sauces, stir fries, pickling experiments. You know, the full arc. But, of course, that's not how things played out. Around May 10th, I noticed a few tiny aphids on one of the plants. Just a couple of them, hiding under the leaves. Not a huge deal. Happens every year. So I washed them off with water, checked the other ones just in case, and hoped that would be the end of it. But it wasn't. By the third week of May, things had gone totally sideways. The aphids were everywhere, on the bottoms of the leaves, inside the flowers, crawling around the growing tips. I tried a few more rinses, but it was just like they were multiplying overnight. Well, and the plants, they started showing signs of real stress. The leaves began curling inwards, their color faded to this dull greenish yellow, and weird spots started popping up on nearly all of them. Some leaves even started to fall off, and the flowers? They were either dropping or turning brown before they even had a chance to fruit. It felt like I was watching all that early promise just fade away day by day. I did some research, and yeah, it could have been a virus or a fungal infection spread by the aphids, or just a general immune collapse from being overrun. Either way, the prognosis wasn't good, so I made the call. On May 24th, I got rid of all the peppers, every single one. I just didn't want to risk the aphids jumping over to my tomatoes, cucumbers, or marigolds. It sucked, like a lot. I mean, these were the plants I had raised from seeds. I had replanted them, trimmed them, rotated them, watered them, and invested a lot of hope in them. And now they were just gone after like 4 months of care. So that wraps up May in the garden. It's been a month full of ups and downs. A little chaotic at times, but also kind of peaceful in its own weird way. Some plants thrived, like the tomatoes and radishes, which were already giving me actual harvests. Others, like the peppers and summer crops, didn't quite make it. But hey, they're just a part of gardening. It's not always perfect, and honestly, I'm learning as I go. I've realized how much of this process is about patience, about noticing small changes, adjusting on the fly, and not being too hard on myself when things don't go as planned. Even the mistakes are teaching me something. Looking ahead, June is going to be a big month. The weather's finally warming up for real, so I'm getting ready to plant out the summer crops. Cucumbers, zucchinis, melons, and maybe even a second try at pumpkins. I've already started a new batch of seeds, this time in a sunnier spot, and they are looking way better than the first round. I'll also be direct sowing more sunflowers, since a few didn't survive the May cold snap. And hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll get our first strawberries soon. The plants are flowering and forming fruit, so it's just a matter of time. Thanks for sticking with me through another month. Whether you are just watching or growing your own little garden too, I really appreciate you being here. Let's see what June brings. As always, happy growing and see you next time.